Hello, it's Troy Francis coming at you from Mexico City. Now, I have spent a lot of time considering the fundamentals of attraction, and it's a really important topic if you are a dating coach or someone concerned with intergender dynamics, because without attraction, you really don't have anything, do you? There needs to be attraction there initially for the interaction to start and to start well, and for it to lead to something. And attraction really is the glue that underpins sex and romance and relationships of whatever length, whether we're talking about short-term casual relationships, hookup culture, or we're talking about long-term relationships and even marriage, you know? I mean, attraction needs to be present, and as you're probably aware, when the attraction starts to wane and it starts to die, then relationships get into stormy waters because the sex starts to die off, and then the glue that's holding that relationship together is weakened, and it just all starts to go in the wrong direction. Okay, so attraction is really, really important. And what is it that creates attraction? If we can figure that out, if I can figure that out, then I will be the world's first trillionaire, okay? Because it is such an important thing, and it gets argued about a lot, because a lot of people think it's just about looks, or it's just about money, or it's just about height, or some, you know, one of those things. And obviously all of that plays into it, but if you had to narrow attraction down to a single interpersonal component, okay, interpersonal, so yes, looks count, looks matter, you've got to looks max, you've got to sort that out, you've got to sort out your fitness, your money, your physique, grooming, all that kind of stuff. But putting that aside, if you had to narrow it down to one interpersonal component, that component would be mystery, okay? And it's perhaps, maybe no coincidence, that one of the people who kicked off the whole tradition of writing about dating, and, well, actually didn't kick it off, that would be inaccurate, but was certainly a well-known exponent, actually called himself mystery, all right? Because mystery is so important in generating attraction, okay? Because when you meet somebody for the first time, right, what happens? Well, you start to get to know one another, okay? Now, as I've said before on these videos many times, human beings are naturally wired to want, let's try and cross the road here without dying. Human beings are naturally wired to want to covet what they can't have, or what they can't easily have, okay? And if you are an open book on the first meeting, and if you give everything away about yourself early on in the interaction, that is to say, if you take away the mystery, then you make yourself seem to be very easily obtainable, okay? And the woman that you meet is going to think, I've got nothing else to figure out about this guy. I know everything about him already, because he's been so open and so vulnerable, and he's told me all of his life plans and his vulnerabilities and his secrets and all the rest of it. And all of that's very nice, but quite frankly, I'm a little bit bored, okay? So I'm not talking about trying to, you know, like lie by omission or anything like that, but I would say that retaining a degree of mystery is really, really key. And this is where actually a lot of guys go wrong, and particularly a lot of guys whose dating advice has been gleaned from the mainstream, because of course the mainstream advice is pretty much the complete opposite of that. You know, if you think about what happens on a mainstream date, okay, the guy and the girl, they meet up, they go to a restaurant, probably for dinner, because that's what everyone thinks that they should do, and they sit down, and awkwardly over the 3 courses they talk. And what do they talk about? Well, they talk about, you know, the guy relates his history, you know, his work history, maybe his relationship history. He talks about things that have gone, you know, the reason why he's not yet married, you know, maybe he talks about some of the disastrous relationships that he was in before and why they went wrong. And he might talk about his career. and he might talk about his career aspirations for the future and where he sees himself. And he might talk about things like the fact that he wants a family and how many children he wants to have and the kind of values that he would like to instill in those children as they grow up, and the kind of partner that he would like to meet in order to help to make that happen. Okay? Now, men are generally very logical creatures, okay? And to do all of that, to talk about all of that stuff, makes a lot of sense. It really, really does. It makes a hell of a lot of sense, because you're on a date with somebody, and this is particularly in the case, obviously, of you're trying to find a long-term relationship. You're on a date with somebody, and it makes sense, doesn't it, that you're going to talk about those things. You're going to discuss those factors because, well, you're looking to find somebody who lines up with what you want. And you may as well put it out on the table, and she puts out on the table what she's looking for, and you see if it all matches up. So logically, yes, it makes a lot of sense. Emotionally, it makes less sense, because the kind of guys who date in this way tend to be a bit boring, and they tend to come across as a little bit boring, okay? Because what are they doing? They are putting everything out on the table immediately, all right? And they are effectively saying, listen, if you meet these requirements, and I very much hope you do, then I'm all yours, you know, because I'm being very upfront about what I want and where I'm coming from and everything else. Now, my strategy in dating, there's a guy actually waving a red flag over here, which is quite funny. Maybe it's symbolic of something. My strategy, and the strategy of many other guys that I know and I work with, has been pretty much the opposite of that. And that strategy is to actually give away very little in the first meeting and over the first few meetings, okay? And it's a very, very, very deliberate strategy, all right? Because in giving away too much, you give away a certain degree of power for a start. But more importantly than that, you weaken your hand because you lessen the mystery that surrounds you. You want to be somewhat enigmatic, okay? You want her to have to figure you out to some extent. You want her to remain interested, okay? Nobody is interested in a crossword puzzle that they've already completed, okay? Nobody goes back after they filled in all the clues on that crossword puzzle. Nobody goes back and goes, I think I'm going to have another look at that crossword puzzle. That was really good. I think I'm going to engage with that crossword puzzle again. Because what would the point of that be? All right, what would the point of that be? Because the crossword puzzle has already been solved, all right? And it's the same thing with attraction, okay? Attraction is predicated to a degree on mystery and on distance as well, and that's another thing we can talk about in another video. As many of you will be aware, one of the key things that kills attraction in relationships is cohabitation, right? You move in together, the mystery goes, the dull realities of domestication set in, and the relationship starts to flounder, okay? So so distance is important, but most important of all is mystery, all right? And you should bear that in mind when you are going into social situations or when you're going on dates, okay? I'm not saying that you sit there and refuse to give any information about yourself away at all. That would just be absurd. You've got to obviously give a sense of yourself as a person. You're going to, you're going to tell her roughly what you do. You're going to tell her where you live, not your address, but you're going to sort of say, yeah, I'm based in Buenos Aires, and I work in media, and yeah, it's been a pretty good year for me. I've done some investing and stuff like that. But you can keep it pretty vague. And what you should actually be doing instead is focusing more on her. Okay, finding out more about her rather than talking too much about yourself. And that then actually achieves two objectives at the same time, because you are you're doing the empathetic listening thing that our friend Dr. Silk talks about. You know, you are getting to know her, you're showing an active interest in her and getting under the skin of, you know, what she's about, which is important, and it's something you frankly should be interested in anyway if you want to date her or be intimate with her. And you're also not giving away too much about yourself, and that is also important for the reasons that I've just said. So bear those things in mind next time you go on a date, or next time you're in a social situation and you meet someone you're attracted to. Okay, don't be too keen to just give everything away. Don't be too keen to just, you know, tell her your life story, all right? Because it's really not going to do you any favors. That kind of stuff should come out organically over time, okay? It's not that you're going to remain a mystery man forever, but you want to drip feed the details out over time, okay? You don't want to do it all up front, because if you do it all up front, she's just like, yeah, okay, kind of get this guy now. Maybe this bloke off Tinder is actually going to be more exciting and more interesting because he's a bit harder to work out. I've told the story already before in one of these videos, but I remember years ago I was dating this girl and she kind of got bored with me, and she basically broke up with me. And the reason that she gave, or one of the reasons she gave for breaking up with me, was she said, I know all of the clothes in your wardrobe. She said, I know all of the different outfits that you've got. Now that sounds absolutely absurd, and she probably wouldn't say that today because I've got a lot more outfits, but what she meant by that, and it sounded absolutely absurd, I didn't get it at the time, but what she meant by that, really, she probably did know all the outfits I had, but that was symbolic of the fact that she felt that she got to the bottom of me, okay? She got to the bottom of Troy Francis, and as a result, she was no longer particularly interested, okay? So you need to retain that mystery. You need to have that sense of enigma about you. You need to be not too easy to figure out, okay? And certainly not immediately. Over time, intimacy grows, all right? And here's the other thing, just a final thought to end on. If you open up too much too early on, then what you're actually doing is making a play for intimacy with her, okay? And that is going to subconsciously signal to her that you are a bit desperate, okay? Because if you're this archetypal high-value dude who has a lot of contacts, a big network, maybe he travels a lot, you know, very busy, lots of business going on, he's not going to just open up to the first woman that comes along or the first person that comes along. You know, even a guy in a networking situation, he's not going to open up and tell them his life story, all right? He's not going to play for intimacy because he's going to be a little bit more calculated, he's going to be a little bit more guarded, and he's going to really measure people up to figure out if they deserve to come into the inner sanctum or not, all right? So you want to be that guy. You don't want to be the guy who, because he's a little bit desperate, because he's a little bit needy, is prepared to reveal himself entirely very early on in the interaction as a play for intimacy, all right? And I'm talking about intimacy not in the sexual sense here, I'm talking about intimacy in terms of, you know, being close with somebody, all right? You're making a play to get close with her quickly. And if you were a super high value guy with a lot of options, you wouldn't do that, all right? So think about what you're signaling, think about what your demeanor is saying to her, and consider the fact that actually all of us like people who are a little bit mysterious. We like people that we can't entirely figure out. It's just human nature, okay? You've got to go with the grain of human nature rather than against the grain of human nature. Anyway, with all of that being said, I'm in Mexico City still. I'm going to do some shopping now, going to grab a coffee. So if you enjoyed the video, please do hit subscribe, drop a comment underneath, let me know what you think about this particular topic. If you want to get on the phone with me and talk about your own dating and relationship situation or anything else really, you can do a free 15-minute call with me, no obligation. We can figure out a strategy or a game plan for you moving forward. Also, do support the channel on Patreon because we are not monetized here, okay? And thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.